Hi, everyone. So I'm sitting here in Northern California in Santa Cruz Mountains in a bathhouse in the redwoods. And I'm sitting here thinking about how to make the biggest effect on people in this world who are suffering like I was. And it's such a hard thing for me because I have so much information, so many steps and so many tools that I've used to end my suffering and live a life of joy, lightheartedness, and, to be honest, happiness, even in the moments of what could cause suffering, because my life is not perfect. I have a lot of things going on. I have things that most people with their negative mindset would look at as a terrible, horrible situation. And I just don't. I now have such an enthusiasm for life that I always find a way, no matter what situation, to find the joy somehow, or find the good, find the silver lining. And one message that I would share with you is that if you're suffering like I was, and I was suicidally depressed more than once in my life, depressed until the age of 40, suffered from depression, a depressive response to life. That's what it was for me. And what I'll say is, if you're suffering, it's likely all in your mind. I know. You're going to hear that and immediately say, what? No, it's not. I'm not creating this. It's not, I have an imbalance, or whatever story or belief you currently carry about your suffering. That's going to start blocking whatever I have to say, just so you know. So why don't you just take that, set it aside for a minute, and just listen to what I have to say. So I lived 40 years with serious depression, and now I'm 47, and I live every day without much suffering at all. I still have some suffering because I'm human and we just suffer. But what I have come to understand is that our minds are the biggest creators of our suffering. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is how we think to ourselves about what's going on in our life creates our suffering. So if you're constantly noticing all of the bad things in your life, and I'm not saying that you don't have bad things in your life. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you are constantly noticing those things above the good things, you're going to continually stay in suffering, because whatever your main focus is essentially brings about your main way of being. So say when I was depressed, I would walk around and say, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why am I always dealing with this kind of thing? Why do I always feel this way? I'm so depressed. I'm in pain. Just all of the bad things. I would constantly be telling myself about them over and over and over again. And when we do that, it creates this continual negative cycle. And when you're doing that, how could you get out of suffering? How could you not be suffering if all you're thinking about is suffering? You can't. The answer is that you can't. Don't try too hard. The answer is that you can't. So it's just so important. If I could give you one tip to start with, and I know I've already said gratitude is a big deal. One tip to start with is to take the time to see what you're saying to yourself. What are you saying to yourself daily? What is that mind chattering on about? What is your mind chattering on about? Are you constantly focusing on all the shit that's happening that is not cool? Because I was all day long, every day. That's what I was doing. So the first step is to notice what you're saying to yourself. Notice if you are continually focused on the negative. Even if you do have some positive stuff, if you have an overabundance of negative and a really low amount of positive stuff, the negative is just going to overrun the positive. So once you recognize what you're saying to yourself, and if you're suffering, I can guarantee you that your inner dialogue is likely very negative, because that causes so much suffering for us. So once you recognize that you are running a negative script, the time to change it is now. And it's pretty easy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not a fast progression of like, oh, I just started thinking positively and now I feel better. That's bullshit. And that's why so many people fail with positive affirmations and just thinking positively and like all of that shit. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. People create expectations of, I'm just going to say these positive affirmations every day, and they do it for a week and it hasn't worked. And they're like, well, this shit doesn't work. Well, that's because that's not how it works. It's really important for you to take a look at what you're saying to yourself. And then once you recognize, oh shit, I'm saying this thing to myself and I'm saying it constantly. Every time that thing comes up, you would need to flip it into something just a little bit more positive. So if you're having like the crappiest day, you're like, this day is so freaking crappy. Oh, it's so bad, blah, 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 and you're just continually spinning on that day. You can say, whoa, I'm spinning on this day. Okay, this moment does not feel good. I am grateful that I can notice that this moment is uncomfortable. This too shall pass. Every moment is different and more positivity is on its way. Those are the types of things that you can start saying to yourself. So any thought that's negative. So I used to say, when I would catch myself saying, I'm so depressed, I'm so depressed, I'm so depressed, I would say to myself, I may be depressed now. I am on my way to a contented life. I couldn't say the word happy when I was depressed. I couldn't be like, I'm on the way to a happy life, because it didn't feel true. But I could aim for content. So I would switch it out for anything that had to do with my contentment instead of being depressed. I also had chronic fatigue and severe pain. So I would catch myself saying, I'm so tired, I'm so tired, I'm so tired. And so once and that would loop, literally looping every 3 seconds to 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It was, once I noticed my thoughts, it was crazy how much I was actually thinking these things and how often they would loop. So with the chronic fatigue, I would say, yes, I might be tired today, but every day I gain a little bit more vital life force and a little bit more energy. And guess what happened? Every day I gained a little bit more vital life force and a little bit more energy. And at one point, the chronic fatigue just disappeared. It took a while. Like I said, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. And if you think it's going to happen overnight, then you won't be successful. You just won't. You have to remove all expectations of a timeline. There's just no timeline to your healing. You can't put a timeline on it. I experienced pretty major healing after doing these things consistently for 6 months. That is when I really started noticing a difference in both my mindset, which is how you're thinking to yourself, and my physical reality. And once you start doing this and you start really checking your thoughts and flipping them out for something that's just a little bit more positive, and it doesn't have to be freaking unicorns and rainbows, you guys. It's not that way. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do it to yourself. Just find something that's that much more positive. And even if it's just to say, hey, this is happening today, and tomorrow is another day for a better way, and just reframing your mind that it is temporary. The state that you're in is temporary, because likely you think it's not. You think you're going to be that way forever, and you think that you're going to be suffering forever. And, that is what you're continually telling yourself. At least that's what I was telling myself. Because our negative thoughts are so incredibly powerful. They lie so hard to us. And it's not that you're not experiencing all kinds of crap, because you probably are. Like I said, your life could probably be really freaking shitty. And one of the reasons why it stays shitty is because all you're thinking about is the shittiness. And things can't change if all you're thinking about is the shittiness. If your main focus is on how crappy things are, things will just stay crappy. So if you can just nudge the line, that parallel line, you can just nudge it 1% to 2% with a little bit more positivity, and then a gratitude practice, like my last video that I was talking about, adding gratitude in for all the little things that you take for granted, adding that in, and just inching your way toward more positivity in your thought process. If you can start that now, that little nudge that you created will create so much change as those lines keep going out and out and out, as you keep growing, as you keep staying consistent, as you keep moving toward less suffering. Okay, and I'm not going to say moving toward happiness, moving toward joy, moving toward all those things, even though moving toward less suffering actually ends up there. Just when you're in a place of suffering, you need to just think to yourself, okay, I'm just moving toward a little bit less suffering, a little bit less suffering, a little bit more contentedness, feeling a little bit more content. And the way you think to yourself is the path. It's the path out of suffering. It really is. And if you have a shitty situation happen and you're like, oh man, not again, this freaking situation, I can't believe this freaking happened. You go, okay, this situation is happening to teach me a lesson. What is the lesson here? And then you look for the lesson, whatever that might be, because every crappy situation that I've ever experienced was a lesson for me to move, to change, to grow. So if you can look at it that way, it might help you. Anyway, so to sum this up before my bath gets cold, check your thoughts. First off, check your thoughts. What are you thinking to yourself? If you are suffering, what are you thinking about? What? And once you notice that you're looping all these negative thoughts about whatever's happening in your life, you're having some sort of reactive response that is negative, then you go, okay, how can I respond better? How can I switch this to something that's just a little bit more positive? And you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing it. And yes, it's fucking exhausting. It is exhausting to do. Trust me, I know. For 2 years, I went through rewriting every thought that was negative. And you go from catching it sometimes, every now and again, to catching it more often, to catching it more often, to catching it more often, rewrite, until finally you'll have those thoughts and the rewrite automatically happens. It just automatically happens. So it's really about teaching yourself how to think in just a little bit more of a positive way. And then that positivity actually starts growing. And your path starts changing into one that just feels a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And it's all step by step by step with no expectation other than you're doing a thing to help shift you out of suffering. When that's going to happen, you don't know. It's just that you are starting on this path and you are dedicated to making this change because you're just fucking exhausted and you're tired of suffering. And the fact that you're suffering and you're already tired, well, gosh, it's exhausting to change, but guess what? The payoff is way better than staying in that suffering that you're experiencing right now, whatever that might be. Mine was depression. So if you can take anything away from this, I would say it's to really just check your thoughts, to rewrite them when you can. Do not judge yourself when you miss them. Just recognize, oh, there they are. Let's change. Let's change. A lot of times I would say, stop it. What do I want? And then I would say what I wanted, because the other things were not what I wanted. And I was constantly thinking about what I didn't want. So check your thoughts, rewrite them, and continue your gratitude practice. Just do it. Do it for yourself, because somewhere along the way, all that suffering is going to start falling away. It just is. And the way that the path that you need to take to get to a life of joy will start unfolding in front of you. Because right now, you're probably, if you're in suffering, you don't know how to get out. And the only way to change and the only way for that path to unfold is to just be a little bit more positive, because that positivity actually starts creating a path of healing in front of you that you can start walking down. And, that path doesn't necessarily exist in front of you now because you're not looking in the right way. You haven't figured out how you are speaking to yourself and how that's holding you back. So yeah, that's my 2 cents for today. I'm going to go back to my bath and pontificating and meditating and trying to get myself even more aligned than I already am, because guess what? It never stops. You guys, the work never stops. It gets easier, but it never stops. And it's worth it. It's worth it because you're going to grow as a person, and then you're going to know how to do it, and you're going to be able to teach somebody else how to do it. And you're going to be able to raise your kids in a way that's way more positive than you would have if you didn't. It's just a full circle thing. And it starts with you. It starts with you, and you can do it. I have every belief in you, because if I could do it, you can do it. All right, like, subscribe, follow, leave me comments below if you want to know anything about my journey into a very healthy lifestyle, into a healthy mentally balanced place. Ask me anything. I will tell you anything that I have experienced and how I handled it. Yeah. All right, I will see you in the next video. Talk to you soon.